Watch for the premiere of The Bottom Line the week of February the 1st. It's a new season on Qube T1.
Entry on the air. Italian 3 on the air.
Okay, let's start an IV. Okay, he's not looking too good. Okay, I want you to tell him we're bringing in multiple trauma. IV started, possible head and internal injuries. Blood pressure is 100/60. And let's go.
Okay. Squad 1 at Grand Hospital. We're coming with multiple trauma, possible head internal injuries. BP 100/60, ETA 4 minutes. IV established. The victim is conscious. Squad 1 out.
Okay, Squad 1, you're clear.
Squad 14 in Columbus Fire, we're in service. Squad 14 in service.
The Grand Hospital emergency room. High pressure work. But like most services, an emergency room is people helping people. And tonight, Columbuscope profiles this inner city emergency room and some of the people who make it work. We'll start with a squad ride from the scene of the accident. Now, I hope this never happens to you, but let's follow the Grand Hospital emergency team treating a trauma victim.
Keep his airway open. A lot of people panic. They just hear the siren, they don't know what to do. People just don't know what to do. They stop. They'll stop and block us from getting through an intersection. They just stop right in front of us. We don't know what they're going to do. We've been on a run before, and we were on Broad Street again, and we were going westbound. This woman's eastbound, saw us coming, and just let go of the steering wheel and grabbed her face. You know, that would kind of scare you too. You know, our biggest problem as far as being injured would be in an emergency run on the way to an emergency scene. Is the chances we take that are getting in wrecks. Just because people don't know what to do. I don't know if they forget to read the laws or forget about them, but they just have to move over to right and stop. And that would save us a lot of problems. Okay, you ready to take him out? Let's watch him now, make sure he doesn't move his head. Okay, let's get him out.
Great.
Be careful.
Easy. Side.
Okay, let's get him up in there.
When we get a call over the radio and we know there's a trauma coming in, and what we do is we set up our cubicle for the trauma. That is, we know ahead of time if there's chest injuries, we may need chest tubes. We know we're going to need things like IVs and Foleys and things like this. We set this whole thing up so that when they come in, we don't have to do any running around. Everything is right there.
We have a lot of multiple traumas. Not a great amount, but we do have a lot of multiple traumas. These are difficult cases because you're working with, in a multiple trauma, you don't have just one system to work with. You might be working with a person that has had a head injury to the chest, an injury to the abdomen, which can affect many areas of the body. And these are things that you have to keep up on. You might not have to work with just the bleeding aspect of it. You might have to work with a person that's unconscious, and maybe not only is he bleeding, he's unconscious and his breathing is not well, so you're not getting enough oxygen throughout the body, and you have problems with that. So I think multiple traumas are really serious in themselves, that there's so many things that are involved, so many areas of the body that you have to work with.
Oh, he's been in an auto accident. Got some head and internal injuries. Head and internal injuries.
Okay.
Blood pressure isn't too good right now.
Okay.
A fractured jaw.
Okay. Got a name on him?
The only thing we get his first name is John.
Okay.
No other ID on it.
Nobody with him
No
then,
one
huh?
with him in the car.
Let me get him on.
Got a good airway right now.
John? John, how are you? John? Oh, seems like he's awake, but he's not speaking.
He's moving
He
his
was-
legs and stuff.
His eyes
around,
were open,
so.
but he just won't say anything.
He's got a lot of injuries around the mouth. That's one of the problems.
I need some to clean him off with. Lou, you want to get me a basin so I can clean his face off and stuff?
Better get
Dr.
Dr.
Dixon?
Dixon. Yeah.
What you got, Pat?
An auto accident, head and internal injuries, jaws fractured. His blood pressure was 100/60 when we took it.
His airway okay there?
Airway was
No
okay.
problems. What the car look like?
Tore it up. It was in really bad shape.
His pressure's 60 now, Dr.
60?
Dixon.
Okay, you
Yes.
better get another line in him. Lactated
Okay.
ringers.
I got it over
Run
on
it
the
wide
side,
open.
Jane.
Okay.
Better get the trauma trousers too.
Okay.
You got a 14 gauge over in that
Call
cart
lab
there.
down, all right?
Yeah.
You need a
114?
Yeah.
CBC, lights, type and cross for 6
tourniquet,
units per
please.
time in PTT.
Okay.
Now here's a
Let me
tourniquet.
get a listen to him here. Get his clothes cut off everywhere
Okay.
too, okay?
Pulse is really weak and thready.
Okay,
About
let's get the extra-
120.
see if you can't get another peripheral line in, then I'll try and get a
Okay.
central line in him. His belly's pretty tender, pretty tight.
Got the pants are on. I need to
Okay.
pump them up.
Better have
yeah.
respiratory come down too for his airway, and plus we need some blood gases.
Charles, I need lab,
And another
an
blood pressure.
X-ray.
You get x-rays, get a cross-lateral cervical. Try and keep his neck and head stabilized here until we get those films. Get a chest film on him too.
I'm not getting a blood pressure.
Okay, get the trauma pants pumped up on him.
Okay, they're pumped.
They're up. And he's got 2 lines in now.
Okay, get me set up for a central line.
Okay.
Take another listen to him.
I'm gonna need respiratory.
He's not
down
moving
here,
air as
Charles.
well either. We better get him tubed, so get respiratory
Okay.
down, give me some suction set up.
Tubes are right behind the bed
Okay.
there.
Here's the suction.
Okay. Get the yanker on it for me.
Okay.
Big suction tip.
Okay. It's working. Okay.
You got respiratory coming?
They're coming.
They're on
They're on their
their
way.
Okay.
I need that ventilator over there. His pulse is like really thready and weak, about
Okay,
32.
trousers are up. Open the IVs wide up. Call the lab and tell them to get me some.
No
some
blood
O-negative.
pressure.
Tell them to get me 4 units of O-negative blood down here right away and get some blood into them.
Blood
Got no
pressure.
blood pressure.
He looks like he's going out, Dr. Dixon.
Okay, let's get him tubed and
Okay.
get everybody down.
Yeah, he's not responding. Not at all. Pulse is really weak and fast.
First, you find yourself in a situation where you're hurt, and all of a sudden you find yourself helped by all these people, you know, because they know you're in a dire need situation. And once you're, in the ambulance or so, you don't know what's happening. You're just there. Everything else around you is moving and stuff. And afterwards, you find yourself out of the ambulance and onto this, thing that's, rolling through all these rooms and everything. And there's all these people around you, that are there just to help you. And who knows? You're probably, out cold or anything. You don't know what's going on until you get into that operating room. And it's really not. I say it's really an emergency until after it's over.
I think it's unique because it's an inner city hospital. The people that come in here are not well-to-do. They don't have physicians they can go to in warm homes, and when they come in here, they need a lot of things done for them, not only from a medical point, but also from a social point.
We see people from basically all over the city whose physicians practice at Grant, and they get referred here. During the weekdays, of course, there's a huge population of people in the city offices and the buildings downtown who are basically, working people who have various problems and come here for that. By the same token, we also see a fairly large indigent population from the area surrounding Grant.
Downtown Columbus has a lot of areas of, we are close to the freeway. We are also close to the bus station, so we get a lot of transit type people that maybe the outlying people would not get. You know, people that stop through on the bus and get sick, they're brought to the emergency room. We also have areas where there is, well, you might find a lot of the derelicts, you know, they are in downtown Columbus, and quite naturally they would be brought to the closest hospital, which would be Grant Hospital.
Everything is broken down, their whole attitude, and a lot of them have given up. In the outlying hospitals, I'm not saying all of them, but I used to work in an outlying hospital, very well-to-do. We rarely saw these type of people. You see these people in the inner city hospitals. And it's really kind of sad, but they do come here, and I happen to like working with them because I feel it's a real challenge.
Some of the things that we had seen during the year of '81 was people in automobile accidents. So we saw about 823 automobile accidents. Overdoses, somewhere between 375, 400. Total visits were about 26,650. Out of that number, 4,590 of those patients were admitted to the hospital. We did have 60 cardiac arrests here in the department over the past year. 39 deaths in the emergency room.
Outright fraud is fairly unusual, although there are people who see us as an access to drugs, perhaps, or to work excuses or school excuses, or a way to get something for their own benefit that we would need to provide. Spotting these people sometimes is difficult, although usually it's fairly obvious. They come in with a story that just is not consistent with the physical examination, or come in with a story which is difficult to believe. And those people, we try and make sure they have no medical problems, and then ask them to find their health care elsewhere.
I don't know whether you could really call them frauds. Abusers, maybe, misusers. A fair number are seeking drugs. Some are seeking excuses to get out of work and needed an excuse for their employer, and they come for that. Basically, we cannot turn anyone away. We see everyone who comes in, and the physician makes the determination about what's going to be done. So we do make a chart on these people. They're seen by a nurse, their vital signs are taken and what have you, and then the physician makes a final disposition. It's not really any way of dealing with them per se, except doing what is right. Seeing them, have the physician see them, make a medical decision, and release them like anyone else. The problem it creates is increased costs for all of our patients.
There are several who like to have factitious convulsions on Qube buses, and typically, of course, the squad gets called, the patient is brought to the emergency room. We know a couple of these people well. We had one who tried to tear the emergency room apart with one of our linen carts one day, jumping off, swinging it, struck the orderly, and had to be wrestled to the ground and taken off by the police. But fortunately, that's fairly unusual, that someone goes completely wacko like that on us. And in this case, it was more that she's just a belligerent person who didn't particularly like us.
We also have problems in some instances with people that take overdoses of certain medications, which causes them to respond or react very belligerent, violent, sometimes very harmful. They can be harmful to themselves, and also I've been struck many times by people under the influence of drugs or alcohol.
Once in a while someone comes in who's had a little bit too much to drink, and they'll come in here and they want to be taken care of right now, right this minute, and no talking in the world. And they're not going to follow your instructions. They're not going to lie down on the stretcher. So let's say, for an example, they've got a cut on their forehead and we have to sew it up. They won't lay down and let us take care of that, and they're just walking around the ER raising a lot of cane.
The one that really bothered me the most was a 14-year-old boy who had been eating some sort of seeds. I'm not sure just exactly what the name of the seeds were, and he was very, very out of it. We could not control him. He was biting. He bit me. He was biting, and he was thrashing about, and he was banging his head against the rail, and we had to tie him down for the simple reason to prevent him from falling off the cart, and also to keep him from doing any more damage than he was doing to us already.
I can think of one patient that came in. Let me see what was wrong with him. He was a GI bleeding from his gastrointestinal tract, and he had lost so much blood that there wasn't enough oxygen getting to his brain, and he was just totally off the wall. And we couldn't, he was a large gentleman, like 6'1", 6'2", and we couldn't sit on him and restrain him enough to hold him down, so we called our security guards to come down, and they helped us restrain him and hold him down until we could get him straightened out.
I had to wait for 2 hours. I went in, I had passed out, I was taken in. Didn't have my driver's license with me because I wasn't out myself. So I took, I went in there, they had me set, and then I come to myself and they told me to have to go back and get my license before they would admit me.
Most of the cases where I was there was nothing really that serious. It was just uncomfortable sitting around waiting.
It was a long wait. It was very nervous. It was while my sister-in-law was in the hospital, and I don't know, the wait just seemed very long.
I had to wait and wait and wait some more.
Waiting in an emergency room, if you're not critical, I think would be expected to a certain degree. We don't see people as a come-serve basis. We, have to take care of the critical patients first. And I think you'll find that in any emergency room, that you kind of have to sort out your cases, and those whose lives are in danger you take care of obviously first, or the ones who are critical, you take care of them. Those who are not, then you see on a first-come, first-served basis.
And we try to go around and explain this to them. Some people, once in a while we get someone who's not very understanding, and they will sign out AMA, against medical advice. But usually people are pretty understanding, and a 2-hour wait in an emergency room from the time you walk in to the time you discharge, from my long experience, is really good. When you get to 4, 5, and 6 hours, then it's getting pretty long. But on the whole, our average emergency room wait is just a little over an hour from start to finish.
I know it's a hard time to wait. I've been a family member waiting out in the waiting room for my family who's been a patient in the ER. And I know what the emergency room staff's doing. And it still is a long wait for me because I want to know what's happening with my family member. And that's the important thing. That's the number one thing with them, what's going on.
We need your name, and we put a name bracelet on you so that the two can be identified together. It keeps us from making errors, so that we don't give you someone else's medication. We don't take an x-ray of you when it isn't needed. And that is your chart, and that's what we work from. And there is some of that we just have to have before we can start.
I hate paperwork. I hate it with a passion. But paperwork is a necessity in this day and age. If you don't document everything that happens, then it wasn't done. I don't care how good you are, how wonderful of a nurse you are, and how thorough you are. If it isn't documented, it's not done.
It just seems with the regulating agencies, increase in litigation, third-party payers demanding more documentation, that there's a lot of duplication in the paperwork that has to be done.
Oh, there's forms for x-rays and lab work and EKGs, and there's forms for everything. You think of it, there's a form for it. And it has to be filled out. And if it's a real bad case, then you've got a pile of forms to fill out.
Nobody came in with the patient, no family member. We don't have a history of any previous illness, and this patient is not in any state to give us any information. We have to sort of go blind. And occasionally, you run into some problems, but that's because you don't know what you're working with, okay? And you have to work from what you see.
Because it is very hectic, and I do think it takes a very special person to do it. But I think that they should be sure that that's what they want before they become involved and make a career out of it.
I love the stress of ER. I love it when my stomach's in a turmoil and it's burning and I'm going around. When I am in a job, when I used to work the floor a long time ago, it's a set pace, and you know pretty much what's going to happen. There's a routine every day. Granted, there's things that do happen, but for the most part it's a routine. I am not a routine person. There are some people that are, and I greatly admire them because I'm not. I like it when I don't know what's coming through that front door. I like to be challenged every minute. I like to be stressed so bad that I just get a headache and I've got a stomach ache and everything else. And I go home at night and I say, why do I do this to myself? But I'll come back the next day.
We had another instance where there was a truck overturned that had some sort of fumes expelled from I can't think of the name of the chemical that they were carrying, and we had like 37 firemen and policemen in within a matter of an hour. And even putting them through the paperwork and also putting them through the process of examinations, and I think all of them had to have lab work done, was quite an experience, and it kept us quite busy. It happened in the early morning, which was good because the ER was not quite as full as before, but 37 people in 1 hour is quite a load to drop on any emergency room.
One of our less fortunate individuals in this community come in, and he had a very, very bad case of scabies. And I have to admit, I came from an inner city hospital in Michigan, and this has been the worst. The only area that was not covered, he had total body coverage, front, back, extremities, in the hair and everything. His face was the only thing, and he had scabies as little tiny sores with little tiny microorganisms underneath them. And he had those, and he also had body lice. And what we did is we took him in the shower, we took off his clothes, and we had to destroy them. And we gave him a new set of clothes and took him in the shower, washed him down, and then put Quell. Washed him with Quell, shampooed his hair, and then came out and then gave him some medication and put Quell on his body and stuff, and we had to admit him because he was so bad. He needed to be taken care of upstairs. It was pretty bad.
I don't know whether I'm tough. I have done all kinds of nursing. If you've been nursing for 23 years, you've probably been in almost every department that you can be into. I've done all types of nursing, and I feel that I do my best nursing in emergency room nursing. It's because I like to see what my results are. And in the emergency room, you can see your results that day. And this is a good feeling to me. If I get a patient in unconscious, vital signs very bad, and before I transfer them up to the floor, they might be awake, they might be talking, their vital signs might be up. I don't say that the nurse does all that. She helps, she's part of the team. But at least I know that my part has helped in some way. That person came in unconscious, and he's going up to the room and he's talking to me now. That makes me feel real good. That's better than the pay in 2 weeks. I mean, that's better than the money.
No, I do not live my work at all. When I used to, when I first started out, I will say that, and I think most nurses do until they learn. It's a learned process. That when you leave this hospital, the hospital isn't going to fall down without you. You can go home, and I leave my job here, and I will come back tomorrow and pick up where I left off. Once in a while, you'll take something home with you, a really bad case, or like a little child, or someone who's really hit you, emotionally. But on the whole, no, you'll if you're smart, you'll leave your work here at the hospital.
There are some gory situations that can bother you too. When I first started in nursing, I couldn't stand the sight of blood. I couldn't stand the sight of blood. And everybody wondered how could I be a nurse, and I couldn't stand the sight of blood. But I worked through that problem. And working in the emergency room, I got to the place where things, big lacerations and severe injuries maybe to the face and head, really didn't bother me until they were really, really, where they changed features. Then these problems would affect. But you still can work with it, because I know within myself, no matter how bad things look and how bad that person is, that what I'm doing hopefully will help. He might not feel it now, but hopefully it will help in the long run. And that's what keeps me going.
And we get people here who have no place to go, don't have a home, and live in some of the shelters around town or sleep in the streets. And when they come in here and you take off their clothes, it's nothing for cockroaches to run out. It's nothing to open up a wound on the leg or on your arm or something to take the dirty bandages off and find out all infested with maggots.
Anybody that says that they walk out of this emergency room or any emergency room after taking care of, for instance, I'll give you an example, a 21-year-old that was working at one of the fast food chains or wherever, I'm not sure just where he was working, and it was a robbery attempt, and he was shot in the head. Well, he looked fine when they brought him in. We worked on him and worked on him and worked on him and could not save him. And there's no way that you can leave out of this place and not think about that kid when you get home.
Yes. When I get home, I need to unwind. I'm not tough enough where I've got to do something, because sometimes when I get home, I'm so hyper and going like this, and all of a sudden it's time to come back down. I'll go out and run a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. I play tennis. play racquetball, I swim, I do something. I don't have a pre-planned program, but I do something. I even go out walking, ride my bike, anything, just to get it worked out. Or shopping, love to go shopping. But you have to do something when you go home to unwind, because the stress factor gets so high.
I have certain ways that I use to relax after I leave here. I love to read, and reading to me is probably just as important as a nerve pill would be to relax me. I don't need nerve medication. I can use my reading, and reading puts me in another atmosphere, and it relaxes my body, and then I don't think about some of the things that I've had throughout the day.
We had a case where 2 mothers had went into the store and left 4 little children, little munchkins, little tiny munchkins, in the car running. And something happened to the car, and it blew up and burned. And all 4 kids were alive when they brought them into our hospital, into our ER. They were charred black, little kids like this, little kids. And we took care of them, and the kids were burned so badly that they had no pain, no feeling. They had no eyelids, no hair anywhere. It was all burned off. And we knew they were going to die. And we took them to the burn center. Upstairs was where I came from. It was the Western Michigan Burn Center. And we went to take them up there, and the smell lingers with you when you have a burn like this in the ER. It lingers throughout the ER. It gets in your clothes and in your hair and in your nostrils, and you can't get rid of it. And it's there. And I think that case, I still remember that to this day, holding that one child. And he just cried and cried and cried and kept looking around. His eyes were so swollen, he couldn't see anything. They were burned. And all 4 of the children died within a 24-hour period, and that shook most of us up.
The emergency room staff, and especially the night emergency room staff, were very professional, and I think Grant has among the most competent doctors and nurses in the city, from what I've seen.
Oh, when my mother was in the emergency room one night, she couldn't have got any better care. And I have to give them all the credit in the world.
Great job, great job. That's all I can say. They were just beautiful people, really. They were just great, honest, They were the best I could, that's the best service I ever got, anywhere I've ever went for anything, really.
Well, I feel that, they're trying to do their job, and I appreciate what they're doing.
CBC, lights, type and cross, 6 units, pro time, and PTT.
Okay.